What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Lucky Titan podcast. And today we have a fantastic guest with us. His name is Grant Baldwin. Now, Grant is the founder and CEO of the Speaker Lab, an Inc. 5000 company that has been crushing it in the speaker space. So Grant has a guarantee to help you land paid speaking gigs through his program. And today I got him to share some of the background and the secrets behind actually getting paid speaking gigs. Now, we're going to deep dive into his speak method today. I think he calls it the speak framework. So I'm very, very excited to dive into this with you guys and with Grant as well. Now, speaking of speaking, right? So if you're going to go out and do some speaking gigs and get on stage, you should probably be recording this, getting some solid B-roll video footage. But then what do you do with that after the event? This is where our sponsor, Repurpose House, comes into play. What Repurpose House will do is they will take these speaking engagements, take this video that you record from them, and they'll repurpose it across all of the platforms. So what they do is they not only chop up the content, pull out some of the highlights, they brand it to you, they post it on your social media, they distribute it for you so that you can get more reach from the content that you produce. They are a company that I have worked with personally. They've worked with people like Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, some of the biggest names on the planet, and their content is bar none, some of the best content I've ever seen. So I hope you guys go check them out. And we got a special link to be able to dive over there and get to the front of the line, which is repurposehouse.com/Titan. All right, everybody. I got a really awesome guest here today. And it's a guest I've been looking forward to for quite some time. And Grant and I's calendars just kept kind of going back and forth. So I was glad we finally were able to align on a date and get this interview recorded, because Grant is an Inc. 5000 entrepreneur, doing so just in the last couple of years. But his company, the Speaker Lab, is one you guys have probably heard of a lot because it's very, I would say, almost customer facing, right? This is a company that helps train people on how to get paid speaking gigs. And I know many, many people who've gone through Grant's program and have just raved about him and about how amazing he is, and the fact that he can guarantee paid speaking gigs, which for most of you is like, whoa, that should perk up your ears. So very, very excited to have you here with us today, Grant. So everybody, this is Grant Baldwin. Can't wait to have you here, man.
Josh, thanks for letting me hang out with you, brother. This is going to be fun.
You bet. Good to have you here. So Grant, I want to kind of kick this off, just getting a little bit of background information, not obviously too in depth here, but I want to understand, at what point did you realize that this was a skill set worth selling? When you realize, like, hey, you know what, I can get people paid speaking gigs.
Yeah. So the quick nutshell on my background is I actually went to Bible college. I was a youth pastor for a little while. And then as a youth pastor, it gave me a lot of opportunities to speak. Speaking is one of those things I really enjoyed. I wanted to do more of. I just didn't know, like, how does this world work? Like, speaking is just this mysterious black box. And I was kind of asking questions like, how do you find gigs? And what do you speak about? And who hires speakers? And how much do you charge? And how does it all work? And at the time, this was 17, 18 years ago. So there weren't any courses or trainings or coaches or books or podcasts or resources. So I found myself just stalking other speakers, emailing them, harassing them, peppering them with questions, just like, let me just pick your brain type crap, and learned a couple things. And eventually started booking some gigs. And fast forward, I got to a point where I was doing about 60, 70 gigs a year. And I loved it. It was an absolute blast, and figured out several things on, like, how do you actually find and book gigs, and how does this work? And so when I got to that point, I had a lot of people who were asking me, like, hey, I want to do that. How do you do that? How did you become a speaker? And I found them asking a lot of the same questions that I did when I got started. And so we started doing some coaching and training around that, and realized pretty quickly, like, there's a lot of people who are interested in speaking. And this is, again, kind of a mysterious black box that a lot of people are not quite sure how do you get going and how you get started and how you find and book gigs and how does it all work. And so we started doing some stuff around that. It really started to evolve and take off, and knew that in many ways, the Speaker Lab is what I wish I had when I got started. I always felt like I had the potential, but I needed the plan. I had the potential, but I needed the plan. I knew I was a decent speaker. It wasn't the best, wasn't the worst, but I knew there was something there. Wanted to do more of. I just like, man, just someone just show me what to do. I'll do the work. I'll hustle. I'll make it happen. But I just don't know what that blueprint and roadmap is. And so that once I kind of figured out some stuff, figured it out for myself and what was working, started teaching some people, they were getting results. It's like, I think we're onto something here.
Yeah. It's funny. When I ask this question to people a lot and understanding what pulled them into it, most of the time it wasn't what they were doing initially or what they set out to do. And my curiosity with you was, you mentioned you were doing like 70 speaking gigs a year. Was this because you had a business and you were promoting something, or you just wanted to share a story? Like what was your motivation to do that?
Yeah, I was just purely a speaker. So,
Wow.
one of I had no book, I had no product, I had no coaching, speaking was not like a lead gen. It was just like pure speaking. And I remember I had a friend tell me early on, he's like, speaking is a high paying manual labor job in that you get paid really, really well to stand on stage and run your mouth. But the nature of it is you have to get on a plane, you have to leave your family, you have to go somewhere. It's kind of like a surgeon. A surgeon makes really good money for what they do, but they got to show up and perform surgery. And so
Right.
you make a lot, it's a good job, yada, yada, but it's still a job. And so I knew at that point where in order to increase what I was doing and the impact that I was making, I had to either do more gigs which wasn't really appealing. Being on the road is not as glamorous as people think it is. At least I was gone 80, 90 nights a year. And then the other part of it was that in order to like charge more, you just kind of had to go to a different industry or kind of a different sandbox or pond. And that wasn't super appealing. But I knew there was something to the teaching and training around the business of speaking. There's a lot of people that teach on the art of speaking. How do you create and deliver a good talk? What does that look like? But I couldn't really find anyone who was teaching, but like, how do you actually book a gig? Like, how does that work? Because if I'm an amazing speaker and I exist in isolation and nobody knows what I do, it's hard to get going. And so how do you actually book gigs? And that was something I felt like I'd kind of figured out. And I knew a lot of people were asking about and felt like it was a problem I could help solve.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And for those of you listening, if you're saying, hey, what even is the Speaker Lab? So go to thespeakerlab.com, go check it out. They have a great website where they actually walks you through the full story as well, because we obviously don't deep dive that here on the podcast. But, Grant, I'm really intrigued by this because you're not a PR agency, right? I mean, you're a training company. So how on earth are you guaranteeing paid speaking gigs? That's what's got me so intrigued because, if you're a PR agency, you could say, well, we'll work with you until we get there. Like, how are you doing it?
Yeah, great question. So what we always tell people is we are, sometimes people ask, hey, are you a bureau? Are you an agency? Do you actually book gigs for me? And the answer is no, we do not. And so I always like to think of it as, we don't catch fish for you, but we teach you how to fish. And what gives us a lot of confidence and able to guarantee our results is like, we've seen it work a time and time and time again of people who are coming in and just getting started and wanting to do this. And like, I don't know what I don't know. And like, no, here's the blueprint. Here's the roadmap. And we are really, really clear with people that here's the steps you need to follow, but make no mistake, this is work. And so get ready to buckle down and get after it. And so the one thing that we see sometimes is people who are like, speaking's kind of fun. I think that'd be kind of cool to do. And I wouldn't mind it being a little side hustle. And it's just I'll just dip my toe in and kick the tires of it. And then they're expecting some type of major results. And so we always remind speakers that, listen, if you put in amateur effort, you can't expect professional results. But if you say, no, I'm going to double down on this, I'm making this happen, this is a big part of what I want to do, I'm willing to do the work, those are the people that we see the results. And so I always tell speakers, like, this works if you do the work. But you like joining a program, listening to this podcast, reading a book does absolutely nothing for you unless you implement and apply it. So another way I like to think about it is it's kind of like if you wanted to lose 10 pounds, what do you need to do? Well, I'm no like health expert, but I know you need to do two things. You need to pay attention to what you eat and you need to exercise. It is simple, but it's not easy. It is simple, but it's not easy. And so the framework that we teach and we walk students through, it's simple, but it still requires work. You still got to do the work. You still got to show up. I got to pay attention to what I eat. I got to exercise. Simple. Still, it's still really, really hard and you got to put some work into it. But that's also part of the point of here's not only the blueprint, but like we want to come alongside you. We've got about almost a dozen coaches that you'll work with and hold hands with. And like, no, like when you get stuck here and you're trying to figure something out, like let us remove that barrier for you. We've seen this obstacle before. And here's what you need to say in this situation. And you run into something else. And here's what you should do in this case. And so just being with people along the journey has been really, really impactful.
Yeah, I love the model. The reason why I bring that up is like we've seen that even with our own model. We've had a done for you model where we produce the shows, we do all that work for everybody. And we found that if they don't have the foundational work in place, and that's why I loved your phrase. I'm going to repeat that just for everybody to reiterate this is if you put in amateur work, you won't get pro results. That's so powerful. And I've seen a lot of professionals, even people who are very successful will just try to pay away a problem, right? They're trying to throw money at a problem so it'll go away or to become famous or whatever, but they're not willing to become like in a speaker's case, you're not willing to become a professional grade speaker with a killer keynote or something that's worth money to pay for. So I love the model. I think that's brilliant. Once again, guys, go check out thespeakerlab.com if you want to check out Grant's program. So Grant, for the sake of time here, I want to ask you, to give some really actionable tips to our people here of something they can do. And you mentioned before we spoke about the 5-step process you have to actually help people to get paid to do speaking gigs. So do you mind walking us through that?
Yeah, so we teach what we call the Speaker Success Roadmap. It makes the acronym SPEAK, SPEAK. So if you guys have something to write with, pen, pencil, marker, crayon, lipstick, chapstick, nail polish, blood, whatever, take some notes here. So the S is select a problem to solve. Select a problem to solve. So 2 key questions you got to answer here. Number 1 is who do you speak to? And number 2 is what problem do you solve for that audience? Now, the danger here and the mistake that a lot of speakers make is we try to go as broad and vague as possible. And this is not exclusive to just speakers. This is true for podcasters. This is true for entrepreneurs of any kind. And so sometimes we'll say, well, tell me who you speak to. And they say, well, I don't know. I speak to people. I speak to humans. My message is for everybody. Sometimes I'll ask like, well, okay, now tell me, what do you speak about? And they're like, well, what do you want me to speak about? I can speak about anything. Talk about leadership or marketing or sales or podcasting or entrepreneurship or family or faith or sports. And it's just like, no. Like that doesn't work. Solve one specific problem for one specific audience. So a way we like to describe this is you want to be the steakhouse and not the buffet. The steakhouse and not the buffet. Meaning, Josh, if you and I are going out to grab a bite to eat, we're looking for a good steak. Like we have a choice. We could go to a buffet where steak is one of 100 things that they offer and they're all mediocre. Or we could go to a steakhouse where they do one thing, but they do that one thing really, really well. They're not trying to do tacos. They're not trying to do lasagna. They're not trying to do cupcakes. Like we do steak and that's it. But wait, we got to appeal to vegetarians. No, you don't. Like you solve one specific problem for one specific audience. And again, it's counterintuitive, but the more narrow you are, the more focused you are, the easier it is to attract the right type of customers and clients for you. So that's the first part, S. If you get that part right, everything else we're going to talk about becomes so much simpler. Next part of the process, P, is to prepare your talk. Be really, really clear on the solution that you're going to provide and how you're going to go about providing that. Are you doing keynotes or workshops or breakouts or seminars? Are you doing in-person stuff? Are you doing virtual? What's the goal with speaking, and how and how does the talk fit into, how does the solution fit into the problem that an audience has? Next part of the process, E, is to establish yourself as the expert. So 2 key marketing assets that you need. You need a website, which in this day and age, if you don't have a website, you don't exist. And number 2 is you need a demo video. Now, what exactly is a demo video? So I want you to think of this like a movie trailer. So before you would go see a movie, they're going to take a 2-hour movie. They're going to boil it down to 2 or 3 minutes. And within those 2 or 3 minutes, you have an idea of who's in it, what's the plot, what's the theme, what's the genre, yada, yada. But the goal of a demo video and the goal of a movie trailer is to make people want to see more. And so for an event planner, for a decision maker, you got to remember that they are in the risk mitigation business. If I hire you, if I put you up on my stage, if I hand you a microphone, if I let you talk to my people, I got to make sure that you're going to do a good job. And so I don't need to see a 30-minute talk to determine whether or not you're a good fit. I just need to see a couple of minutes. So that's ultimately what a demo video is. And in fact, for website and demo video within our programs, we actually make those for you. So we just remove that off the list for you, and we'll take care of that. Next part of the process, A, is to acquire paid speaking gigs. Now, this is the part that people want to fast forward to. Like, man, just tell me how to book gigs, right? But you got to have these other pieces in place first. And the mistake here that the speakers make sometimes is going like, all right, I got my website, I got my video. I just sit back and I wait for the phone to ring. And like, nope, doesn't work like that. Like you got to be really, really intentional here and be much more proactive than reactive. So the mistake speakers here will say is like, all right, I posted something on social. Now just people should come finding me and flooding in. Like it doesn't work like that. You got to be much more proactive, identifying events that you would be a good fit for, starting conversations, and then following up, having a system and process to follow up with them. And this is really where I think a lot of the magic comes is sometimes speakers will reach out to someone. Hey, if you ever need a speaker, I hope you think of me. Like, well, they're not. So be really, really specific, intentional, and follow up here. And then the last part of the process, K, is know when to scale. Meaning a lot of people who are interested in speaking are also interested in writing a book or podcasting or coaching or consulting or doing a course. And you can do all the things, but you can't do all the things at once. Something's going to come first. Something's going to come last. You've got to be really intentional about how speaking fits into the mix of what it is that you want to accomplish. So again, there's a lot there, but that's kind of the overarching principles of what we teach inside the Speaker Lab and the Speak framework.
Yeah, and it's brilliant. Do you mind repeating the 5 steps for us really quick?
Yep. The S is select a problem to solve. The P is to prepare your talk. The E is to establish yourself as the expert. A, acquire paid speaking gigs. And K, know when to scale.
Perfect. Just want to make sure. I know people listen to this show all the time and they're like, they went through it so fast. Like I couldn't keep track of which one was which. So thank you for doing that.
I also recognize I talk fast. So I listen to podcasts on about 1.5 to 2x speed, but I can't listen to myself at that because I'm already going too fast.
Oh, amen to that.
We got a lot to cover here. We got to cram it. We got to help the people out, right?
That's funny because when I'm talking to you, I'll talk slow, but when I'm like solo casting, it's people are like, slow down. Like I get so excited.
I'm with you.
Share the story here. Speaking of podcasts, guys, Grant has a fantastic podcast. It's called the Speaker Lab Podcast. Go check that out as well. So, Grant, what really has me intrigued about this process is that it's simple. It's not easy, right? Like you mentioned, it's one of those processes that anybody could really do. But I think a lot of people are going to look at that and say, this is a lot of work. So do you typically recommend this process to somebody if they want to, what I would almost call dabblers, like they want to just like me, for example, I don't want this to be a full-time gig, but I do like getting paid to speak here or there. Yeah. Would this program be for them or is this more for like a career speaker?
Yeah, great question. So we work with people on both ends of the spectrum. And I think this is, again, one of the great things about speaking is I know speakers that, like for myself, I was doing 60, 70 gigs a year. I know people that do 100, 150, 200 dates a year. And some people may be watching or hearing that and being like, that sounds amazing. I would love to do that. And other people are like, nope, no, thank you. Not interested at all, but I'd love to do 5 or 10 or 15. I just don't know. How do I find those 5 or 10? And so speaking can look like what you want it to look like, depending on what your goals are. So one would be get really, really clear about what you're wanting speaking to accomplish, about how it fits into your business. And that can evolve and change over time. But if you're not clear on that, then it becomes a lot more difficult for you to know kind of the effort and energy to put into it. So I would say we can absolutely help people who just, maybe like yourself, Josh, you're like, I just want to do 5, 10 gigs a year. But I think there's still like, I don't need this to be 100 gigs a year, but I still recognize I got to put effort and energy into it in the same way that if I'm trying to lose 10 pounds or I'm trying to lose 50 pounds, either way, it's going to take some work and effort. Right. And so you got to be willing to put in the work and put in the effort. And again, this isn't exclusive to just speaking. This is anything, but yeah, if you're someone who said, I would love to do 10 gigs a year. I just don't know what I don't know. I've been paid a couple times before. I've done some speaking. I want to do more of it. Just tell me how to get started and what the process is. Then absolutely, we work with a lot of those speakers.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and, Grant, before we had this interview, we were talking. I asked you what were you excited about? What's got you excited? And most people will mention a new investment strategy, marketing or something. You said, "Man, my family. I spent a ton of time with my family." And my big curiosity with this, and I'm sure everybody's listening to this, is going 70 gigs. How the heck did you have a family? You have 3 little girls, right?
Yeah. They're not so little anymore. Yeah. So my wife and I, we were high school sweethearts. We started dating. I was a 15-year-old freshman. She was a 17-year-old junior. Come on now, man. Yeah. Right. So we dated for a little while. Got myself a cougar.
Cougar too, man. I know.
Exactly. There you go. You get it. So we dated for a little while, got married. We just celebrated our 21st wedding anniversary. We've been together 26 years. We got 3 girls. They're 16, 14, 12. And so it's me and a house full of women. It's the absolute best. I love it. I'm crazy about my girls. And so I love podcasting. I love entrepreneurship. I love speaking, but my most important roles are being a good husband, being a good father. So when I was traveling quite a bit, I'm not nearly on the road as much as I was. But when I was traveling quite a bit, I think there's very much seasons to it. Right. And so sometimes people assume like, man, 70, 80, 90 nights, like that's a lot. Yeah, it is a lot, but it might be like, I might have a 3-week stretch where I'm gone for 2 nights. I'm home a night. I'm gone for 3 nights. I'm home for 4 nights. I'm gone for 2 nights. You're just kind of in and out. FaceTime's great. Texting is great. But also then I might have a stretch where like I'm home for, 4 weeks and I don't have anywhere to go. I work from home. Even today with the Speaker Lab, as the CEO of the Speaker Lab, like I work from home. We're a completely virtual company selfishly because like I don't want to go to an office. Like when we're done, I want to be able to go out and see my girls and hang out with them. And so I'm really, really intentional about the time that I spend with my family and the investments that I'm trying to make with those 4 ladies that are most important to me.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you bring that up because it's, I've just seen even for myself. So I'm going off in 2 weeks and I had 2 gigs available to me and I actually turned one down about a week ago because my wife was like, "Hey, you've been on the road a lot." And I was like, you know what? You're right. And we could probably make a lot of money from that, but I probably need to cool it. right? I'm only going to be gone for 3 days instead of 7. And she's totally cool with that. Right. And a lot of times I bring her with me, but it's, we've got our he's 1.5, almost 2 now, year old son. And he's, if I'm gone for that long, it's a lot for her to watch him for that long. So I'm always really curious how and I don't want to say the term balancing, but how you work together to make both of those things a reality, like being a good parent, but also being a successful business person. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think even at this point, I'm not on the road now, but the business is much busier than it's ever been. It's bigger than it's ever been. We've got about 35 team members. I've never been a part of a company this size. And so every day I'm trying to figure out new things. And so it occupies a lot of my headspace. And so I think there are seasons to everything. And one thing I ask our team regularly to think about is this a season or is this the way it is? Is this a season or is this the way it is? Meaning in every business, every occupation, every entrepreneur, like there's seasons where it's just busier than others, right? Meaning if you are, if you're an accountant, if you're a CPA, you just know like tax season is just busy, but then it dies down. If you're in retail, November, December, around the holidays, it's just busy and then it slows down. And so I knew as a speaker, being on the road all the time, like I might have a month or two, it's just busy. And then I might be in for a while and my wife's going like, you got any gigs you could do? Like, should you leave? Do you want to go somewhere? Like, just get out of here. Like you're here too long. We need you out of here. And same thing with the business today. There are days and stretches where it's stressful. It's busy. I got a lot on my plate, a lot on my mind, but I also know there's stretches where that's not the case. And I've got a lot of free time and bandwidth. We're real intentional about that. The time that we spend with our girls, the time that we spend as a family. My wife and I still do regular date nights on a weekly basis. I do regular dates with my girls. We do trips on a one-on-one basis with the girls, do family trips. My wife and I take trips. So we're just really intentional about the time that we spend together. So I don't think in order to be successful in business or as a speaker, as a podcaster, or fill in the blank, that, it's impossible to do that and also have a great marriage or have healthy relationships with your kids. Like they can absolutely coexist, but you just have to be really freaking intentional about how you do that.
Right. Yeah. Brilliant. I love it. Well, and my curiosity with this, because it does, so kind of like dovetails into the same point, which is how many shows or how many speaking engagements is too many? Because I've watched this over and over again with people who speak, and in an attempt to get out there, they go and give their signature talk 6,000 times. So it's been heard over and over and over. Pretty sure everybody's heard it before by going on podcasts or whatever. Do you recommend they do that? Or do you recommend that they're not going out there doing that and they're making it almost more exclusive so that they can raise their rates? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So as far as like the talk itself, I think one thing that's important to remember is that the world is a really, really big place, and so just because someone's heard you on a podcast or just because someone's seen you speak, it doesn't necessarily mean that like they could recite everything that you talked about or your key story or a couple key stories or whatever it may be. So I don't think it diminishes or devalues, if you share some of these ideas. So everything we've talked about here, like the speak framework and that stuff, like I'd go stand on the stage tomorrow and share all these same things. And the reality is like most people, even if they've heard some of this or vaguely familiar with it, I may have said it hundreds and hundreds of times, but it may have only been the first time or maybe the third time that they've heard it. But like, I'll give you an example. I was talking to my daughter last night. All right. I took our 12-year-old and our 14-year-old to the local church youth group, and I picked them up and we're driving home, and I was like, hey, what did the youth pastor talk about? And they're both like, I was like, you were just in there, right? And like the reality is like people are going to listen to this podcast, they're going to finish it up, and they're going to go about their day. And if you were to ask them tomorrow, hey, what did you learn on that podcast? They're going to remember a couple things at best. The reality is like we're all busy, we all have a lot going on, and so I don't think it devalues or diminishes at all if someone has if you shared something on a podcast that then you also shared from stage.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. We align on a lot of things, my friend. That was like what I was hoping you would say, because I don't want it to break my worldview. Some people shatter it and you're like, no, dang it, I thought I had such a good thing.
I got to start over now. Crap.
That's awesome. And I love that, because I agree. I think a lot of people think that they're giving away the secret sauce. And the truth is that nobody's going to remember it anyways, right? Yeah. They're going to pick up one little piece. You're going to tell them the exact same thing tomorrow, and the timing's different. And they go, oh, this makes so much more sense. That's awesome.
I'll give you a quick example. Like we've got people on our email list that have been following us for years and years and years. They've attended webinars and they've, I mean, we can see like they click stuff, they read stuff, they show up to stuff, and like they just, they haven't taken action on something for whatever reason. And then like, the season of life just hits them at the right time. They're like, I'm in, I want to join, I want to sign, I want to whatever, and I get that. I'm the same way, we were talking a little bit beforehand I recently started taking flying lessons, and I'm close to getting my pilot's license. And I always just kind of thought it'd be kind of cool. Like I have zero like practical purpose or need. I'm not trying to go to the airlines. I'm not trying to, I don't own a plane. there's nowhere I need to go. I've just always thought it'd be kind of cool. It's kind of a bucket list type deal. And so it's always been in the back of my mind. But then I had a conversation with a buddy almost a year ago, and he had just started taking flying lessons, and it just caught me at the right time. And I was like, well, if this Joker can do it, I can do it. And same type of thing of just right place, right time. Like I'm in, sign me up. Where do I do? What are my next steps there? And it just, I could kick the can down the road for another couple of years, but for whatever reason, that conversation really spurred something for me. I took the next step, and that started the ball rolling. And that's the way it is with most things, like some of it's just catching people at the right time.
Yeah. We say this all the time on this show, but it's 20% product, business, sales, marketing, and it's 80% timing. I mean, everything that you do is timing. And it's funny because entering people's world at the right time is the difference between a sale or not, or a speaking gig or not. So that's just so powerful. Absolutely. So once again, guys, go to thespeakerlab.com and go check out Grant's company. It's such a phenomenal company. And go listen to the show as well. And Grant, I want to ask you this question because I think this will be for those people who are looking at this and going, holy cow, that Speak framework is a lot. So I want to ask you this, because obviously your whole program at the Speaker Lab is all about deep diving those 5 steps, I would guess. But
yep.
Deep diving into those 5 steps. But what I can tell you is that most people are saying, okay, what can I do today? So could you give our audience one action step that they could go out today and get an exponentially large return from in the speaking world?
Yeah. Well, here's what I'd suggest you do is I think sometimes when we go back to that first step of S, selecting a problem to solve, and we're just kind of like, here's some things I'm interested in, or here's what my life story is, or here's what I'm passionate about, but I don't actually know, is there a market for this? Because there's a lot of people who get hired for a lot of different things. We've worked with speakers, every US state, 49 different countries, all different subjects and topics. I'll give you an example. There was a lady we worked with recently who was a veterinarian, and she said, hey, I just booked my first gig. And she lives up in Connecticut. She booked a gig in Vegas for $5,000. First gig, $5,000. Like, that's amazing. Like, tell me about the gig. And she said, it is a pet sitting conference. A pet sitting conference. And I was like, what is that? I don't even know what that is. And so if she'd come to me before and said, hey, I'm really passionate about the pet sitting industry. Do you think there's opportunities to get paid $5,000 to speak? I'd be like, heck no, there's no chance of that. So like all that to say, people get paid to speak on a variety of different things to a variety of different subjects. So how do you start to figure out like what are some of the opportunities that may exist? I'll give you 2 exercises. One, to spend a lot of time on Google, and you're looking for 2 different things. One is look for other speakers who are doing something similar to what you want to do. Because if you start Googling and browsing around, and you're like, hey, I'm the world's greatest expert on underwater basket weaving, and I know everything about it, and I want to speak on that. And you start Googling around and you can't find anyone who's doing it, that's a red flag. That's not a good thing. What you're looking for is like, there's actually opportunities that exist. So spend some time. Again, you're not looking for people who are light years ahead of you. If you say, I want to do some motivational speaking, who else is doing it? Oh, Tony Robbins. That's great. If Tony's doing it, I can do it. No, that's not what we're talking about. Like, look for people who are a step or 2 ahead of you, who have kind of a similar business model, maybe, that just gives you some type of proving ground that like this is a thing. Okay. So do that. And the second thing to look for the type of events that you might be a good fit for. So when we talk about that S and selecting a problem to solve, there's 2 questions there. There's kind of a bonus third question. So 1, who do you speak to? 2, what problem do you solve? And 3, where do those people gather? Where do those people gather? Because as a speaker, there's got to be some natural gathering. And so this could be an association, a conference, a convention, a group. There's just a lot of different ways. And there's a lot of different industries, from associations and churches and faith-based and nonprofits and government and military and schools and colleges and elementary schools and corporations. I mean, there's just a whole ton of different opportunities there. So spend some time just kind of like browsing around, looking for people, A, who are doing it, and B, what are the type of of events that you would be a speaker for? Because it also kind of starts to open the mind of just like, oh, dang, I could speak at, I could also speak at this. That's cool. I would be a great fit for something like that. And one of the tip there is don't look for some like big national conference. Like, oh, I should be speaking at that. No, like start small. Like look for some of those small, local, regional, statewide conferences, conventions, associations where they may not have as big of a budget, but they're still looking for a quality speaker. Like you can make a killing and do great work where you're just speaking on like state level conferences and state level associations. So spend some time just on Google kind of browsing around of what kind of exists in the marketplace. And I think that'll help you kind of get your wheels spinning.